What's up guys, it's Matt Collins Jones here, also known as MCJ, and today we have a video called What is a JSON Schema? In the last video we covered what is JSON. We learned that it stands for JavaScript Object Notation. We learned that it is a way to write and to notate different pieces of information that various things can use, like APIs. And we learned it's a very common language across APIs and also things like the Power Platform, which might be why you're watching this video. So what is a JSON schema and why is this important? So a JSON schema is it's like a blueprint for JSON. So why is this important? It's important because you can sort of pre-validate the JSON that you are receiving. You can say, right, I want this payload of JSON, I want to get this information, and when you send it and it's validated against the schema, it goes, actually, this is in the wrong format. Maybe you have a string and it needs to be a number, maybe it's a number and it needs to be a string, maybe it's blank or null, and therefore something that the application at the other end won't accept and won't be able to process. So JSON schema is a way to pre-validate that data to say, yes, this is the correct format, or this is what you should be sending to us for our application or our program to be able to understand it and then use it. So let's take a look at some examples today. So last time I wrote this bit of JSON out. I've changed it slightly because the Friends anniversary is coming up with a new episode and I'm very excited about it. But essentially these are the different types of properties inside of our JSON. So we have name, which is a string, occupation, which again is another string. We have age, which is a number. So we can see it's kind of different from the strings with it not being inside double quotation marks. We have is_a_dev, false. So again, we have a Boolean, true or false. And then we have an array, and the array contains two things. So the array contains two friends, one Joey, whose occupation is an actor, and one is Chandler, whose occupation is a statistical analysis and data reconfiguration. I myself has a Chandler Bing job, is what I always explain to people. So this is the data that we're going to send somewhere. So what does a schema look like? Well, I've already written that out for us, so let's take a look at the other tab. So this tab is the schema that'll be used for the previous screen. So it starts off, we have the curly brackets opening at the top and the bottom, and then it goes on to what's called types and properties. So the type up here is an object. So what that's saying is, right, I'm going to send you a single piece of information, an object of information, and you're going to deal with it. And that's what the information we have for the schema is, and therefore that's what this information is going to be. It's going to be a single object. The object may contain an array, but it's going to be an object. It's going to be a single piece of information. Properties is here. This is just a way to define that there are things underneath it, because we're not setting kind of a top level JSON sort of like header or anything like that. We're just saying, right, okay, we need some way to distinguish, right, this is what's going on. So we've just called that properties. And then this opens a bracket here, which, as you can see, doesn't close for a little bit. So it closes down here. So we have our close bracket to start with, where we have the object. Then as soon as we hit that properties, we open it and it's going to close down here. So that's to say, right, everything contained within this is the properties, or everything contained in this is what we're going to send you. Next we have the name. So this is the name field from the contact here. So we see name and occupation are our first two. And we know that name is a string. We know that occupation is a string. So as we go back to our schema, we can see name. We open the brace here, and it says type equals, or type is string. So again, this is going to look a lot like JSON, and that's because it is. It is a way to denote what sort of JSON we're getting. So again, we have these key value pairs, but instead of last time where everything was unique, where we had like name, occupation. We have name, which is the key value pair, but then it's saying, right, okay, that key value pair, again denoted by this colon here, and then open a brace, that's going to have a type, and that type is string. So all this is saying is, for the name type is a string. And we're doing the exact same thing for occupation. And as we note, there are commas after each one, again, to just denote a new line. So we have the same thing for occupation there. And then we move on to age. Age has a type of integer because that is a number. And again, that is taken from the last screen. And we have is a dev type equals boolean. So again, if I flip back to our example, we can see that all these things are true. So age is a number, as we've said, it's not got any double quotation marks, it's just a number, and is a dev is false, so true, false being two things that are compatible with JSON without needing quotation marks. So there we have, so we have our string, we have our integer, we have our boolean. Then it goes down a bit further, and then we have the friends kind of header, or the friends part of this, which is an array. And this array, as we can see, opens up here and closes down here. This friends bit will take everything inside here, and this is saying, right, okay, this friends bit, that key value type is an array. So again, it's saying, right, you will get an array at some point in this. The array will have different objects or different properties inside of it, but I'm telling you that there's going to be an array coming, and this is the schema, or this is the format for it. So again, items is kind of denoting that this is going to be one of many items that could be sent in an array, because we may not know how big or how small the array is, but we can see that we've got items, and that's trying to denote that level of the array. Then there's the type of object. So again, we know that inside of the array, we're going to be sending an object. So inside of the array, we're going to be saying, right, this is an object. So this is, again, another piece of information, and it's not, and that's what we're sending. So we're going to send an object, and in this example, the object is Joey, and his occupation being an actor. So that's an object, just like this whole JSON is an object as well. So I'm just really trying to get used to the terms of like objects and arrays. They're not big and scary. It just means a thing, you know, a piece of data, a thing. An array is multiple things. So an array can be multiple objects that we're sending. So again, we have the properties opening up that key value pair just to say, right, we don't have like a top level name for this. This is just going to be everything that's underneath it. And we're going to have name. The name is of type string. And then inside of this properties here, we also have occupation, again, of type string. So we can kind of see that it's going to close that bracket out and say, right, okay, inside of this object, the things that we are receiving is a name, which is of type string, and an object, which is of type string as well. Further down, we actually have something that's a little bit optional, which is funny because it says required. So one of the things that you can specify in your JSON is for things like arrays, what is required in those arrays and what is optional, because you may not always get that information back in an array. So if it doesn't send name, for instance, you would not potentially receive name. So when you're creating an array, you may not have that name field, and therefore your program may not create a property or a key value for name and a value because it doesn't know it. It's kind of a unique example, but what this allows you to do, saying this required, again, which is inside of this this bracket here, and sorry, this items bracket here, is saying, right, in my array, these are two properties that are required, name and occupation. You can remove this, and you can not use this as being something that is required, so you can take this out. But what this allows you to do is specify to the program that is sending you the JSON hey, this is required, your array needs to contain this. So hopefully that makes sense. Now that's what you do for an array, but sometimes you may have objects that will contain a value but not contain like a key but not contain a value. So for instance, one of the most common ones is things like a boolean. So up here in my object I have a boolean which has which is a dev, and that's my boolean. So inside my object I know I'm always going to get these, so I don't need to say that these are required. It's just another array that I'd need to specify that for. But I may always get that is a dev, but I may not get a value with it. Now, the reason for that is maybe it doesn't have a value in the source system. You know, there are systems where you don't put in a yes or no answer, and therefore it doesn't have a value. So that can kind of lead to issues with data, but when you're sending it to something, maybe you need to default those things, or maybe you need to do something else. So in this instance, if someone sent a JSON object to me and isADev was blank instead of being a true or false, because null again is a valid value in JSON, it may fall over, it may not work. So one of the things you can actually do is you can actually specify if a key or a value could be null. So for instance, or could be a different type. So in my type here, what I can do is I can make this into an array. So I'll put a square bracket here, put a square bracket here, and put that in, and then do null like that. So what that does is that says, right, isADev can be one of the following types, a boolean or a null. So again, I'm creating an array to say, right, there could be multiple values here. This is how you denote this in a coding language. It's an array, it's multiple things, it's not a single value. If I was to try and take these square brackets away, it would go, yeah, I don't really know what this is. We've got a colon expected here because it's just not really figuring it out. But if I have those square brackets in, it will go, oh, this is an array. Okay, it can be one of these values. So if someone was to send a JSON object with a boolean of true or false for isADev, or not send that value at all, but we still have that isADev there with just a null value, this JSON schema would go, yep, that's fine, that's approved. We can let you through. We can use this information that you've sent and do something with it. So there we have it. That is a brief introduction to JSON schemas. It's a little bit complicated to get your head around it, especially when you compare something like this, which may now hopefully seem really easy to use in terms of this is what you're used to, this is like a name, this is a value, that's all fine. When you look at this, it's a little bit more abstract, I would say, but if you break it down into the simplest components, you will you'll be able to understand what's going on. So here, you know, age is an integer, isADev is a boolean or a null value, that sort of thing. Plus there are loads of JSON schema creators for you, so you can load in some sample JSON payloads like this contact one here into something, and it will pump it out for you into the schema. I have a video on that here for using it in the Power Platform, using it in Power Automate, and you can check that video out and see how these things can be used, which is really useful. But there are other programs available that will allow you to do that as well. I will be truthful, I did not write this schema, I just used Power Automate to generate it for me, because life's too short to write your own schemas. But sometimes you need to, and sometimes you need to edit them like this, because it'll just give you the most common scenario. So in this instance, my isADev payload was a boolean, so it knew it was a boolean, but it doesn't know it can be null. So you may need to edit it, and that's why this video is really important, to be able to understand how a schema is put together, to be able to understand the individual components of it. Then you can edit it, you can understand it, you know what data you need to send, and you can edit it if needed as well. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This is my second video on my sort of introduction to JSON, so I hope it was useful. If it was, if you could share it with a friend, that would be appreciated. If you could drop a like or make a comment down below on if this was useful or what you've maybe used this for, that would be really helpful as well. And I'll see you next time.